Hey everybody, so today we're going to look at the Python isinstance function. What this function does is it checks a number or like a collection type to see if it is whatever you want it to be. So in this case, below, if you see here, it says if is instance, and then we have data, and then we have list. So this is the item we're checking it with. So if we passed in list of nums and check this, it would come out as true, and it would just return the data. The end result is that we want everything that passes through that to be checked to see if it is a list, and if not, return it as a list. So if we pass this through, then it'll go here, it'll say data, is it a list? No, it's not, so it's false, and then it goes to the else statement, and it says data equals data within a list, pretty much, and returns that new variable, and it'll return 0 within a list. So I'm going to run this so that you can visually kind of see what's going on, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the code. So if we run that, you can see the output for both of these functions. So we've got a function here called is_instance, and then we're passing through our variable list of nums, which we already know is a list, and you can see it returned the same thing, it just returned list. And here we've got is_instance, our same function, and we instead passed num, and the difference is you can see it returned num with within a list now, so it has 0 within a list. So what's happening is, and if you don't know functions, there's some awesome stuff on the internet, so definitely Google it. But I will do a future video talking a little bit more about functions. But real quick, def, it just means define, so we define the name, and then in here, what we do is we put, it could be any name, but to keep it simple, I just put data. And what we do from there is we're checking to see if data equals a list. So we'll say if is instance data equals list, pretty much, return data. Because if it does, if it's true, it'll return data. If it's false, then it'll go through this else statement and then return it as a list. So, and this doesn't just apply to things like this, and we'll look at another example, but real quick, I want to mention that you may want to use this maybe in a Dynamo script where the input, you always want it to be a list, but maybe that's kind of confusing, or the usability isn't that great for end users, because they're going to have to create a list and then tie in a node and make sure, and instead you just want them to be able to plug it in regardless on if it's a list or just a single number. So this is a quick way for you to check to see if it is a single number and then convert it to a list as needed. And maybe it's because you have for loops and other things happening within the code that you need to loop through. So this is just one method to kind of handle that. I'm sure there's other ways to use this and other ways to do that, but I found that this was pretty useful to kind of achieve that. So let's look at this real quick. Let's try to for all our inputs, let's check to see if it's a float, and if it isn't a float, we'll change it to a float. So if we do define, so we'll create another function. We'll say is_instance, and we'll just put float so that we know what function we're using, and then we'll just pass in data. And then we'll say if, and for this one, we'll do if not. So if not float. So is instance. We'll do data and then float. And so if it isn't a float, what we're going to do is do data equals float. And then data, and then we're going to return data. Now, since we're doing the if not statement, we're checking the float. We don't really need to do anything else. We don't need to add an else statement, because if it is false, and it is a float. So if not a float, and it is a float, um, then we could just leave it alone, because that's what we want it to be. So we have num up here, and actually real quick, we're going to run this and check to see if we have any issues, and need to add that. So if we run that, and then if we grab our name of our function, we can put it here, and then let's pass in num. And the idea hopefully is that we get a return of a float. So if we run num, come down here, run instance, and you can see it returns a float. Now if we do, we change that to a float and press enter or shift enter, come back down here and run that again, you'll see it returns nothing. And the idea is that you're not going to be updating it. You don't need to return it, because whatever the rest of your code's going to do, maybe it's just using that same variable name num. So it's not that important. But like if you were changing the variable name in here to something else, there could be potential issues. Maybe you're creating a new variable and returning that variable instead. Like, but in this case, we don't need to do that. But for just as a visual example, if we did just want to, when we ran this, to actually get a return, so that we saw, regardless on what we put in there, we got a return. So if we put the else statement in there, and now if we run this, it'll return num. So it checked to see if it was a float. Because it was a float, it went into the else statement and it just returned the value anyways. You'll see, like if we change this to 1, run it, you'll see it's the same. So anyways, that's the isinstance function. I just wanted to show that I think it could be useful in different scripts and different things that you use. And again, just like anything else or any other videos, this document, this Jupyter notebook, along with the video, you can, and I think even I think I put the thumbnails in there too, so you can download all this stuff for free. Just check out below in the description. Just look at the OneDrive and download this stuff. But anyways, thanks a lot for watching. Hopefully this kind of helps you with Python, and let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next video.